Hey friends, enjoyed the speaker tape here. This is Justin D speaking in 2022 at the Petaluma, California Alano Club. Please like and subscribe.
I don't think I've been to an in-person meeting in 3-4 months or something. I've been doing a lot of Zooms. So thank you, Dave, for the invitation. It's good to be with other humans, especially of my tribe. So generally start off by stating, the usual facts. I have a sobriety date, which is November 22nd, 2012. So by the grace of God and the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm celebrating 8 years clean and sober, which was damn near impossible for a hopeless alcoholic like myself, seemingly hopeless alcoholic. I have a sponsor, Rick B, up in the Nevada Fellowship, not too far away from here, and I've worked through the steps with him. I'm working with a couple guys right now in the middle of 5th steps. A couple are supposed to show up here, but I don't see them around. Sometimes that's how it goes, I guess. But I'm sober. So in a general way, I'm going to try and describe, what happened, what it was like, and what things are like today. And hopefully we can relate and I'll stay sober through that. I had I was born, right? And things were good. Things seemed pretty cherry until I was about 7 years old. And then I started thinking a whole lot, Just briefly, to give contrast, I remember, I think it was about 5 or 6 years old. It was an Easter Sunday up in Sebastopol. My whole family was there. My dad, my newly born sister, my brother Eric, who was a little bit older than me. My parents were still together. It was a sunshiny day, a little bit warmer than this. And we were outside making apple juice on this apple orchard. And, peeling the apples, putting them through the press. And it was a beautiful experience, I was really young. We were looking for the golden egg and all the chocolate candy, right? And it was a perfectly normal experience. And there wasn't this inner dialogue in my head like, oh no, am I going to have enough candy tomorrow? Or like, oh, am I going to run out of apple juice? I wasn't worried about the future because I hadn't conceptualized the idea yet that I could be anywhere else than where I was at that moment in time. Around the age of 7 or so, my parents split, got separated, and things started to shift a little bit. I remember a few years after that, I had one of the first drinks. I convinced a buddy of mine to steal a bottle of booze from the local store, and we drank it because we saw what the adults did, and we wanted to be adults. And I felt pretty uncomfortable in my own skin at that moment, being about, I think it's probably 11 years old, and was in school and didn't really feel like I fit in too much. And we got this stuff, Bombay Sapphire. It was awful. And we drank it, and we liked the effect that it produced. Nothing major happened that day. We finished the whole bottle. We got a little sleepy and, tried to have a good time on Super Bowl Sunday. So that was one of the first experiences. Now, once that bottle was gone, I tried to convince my friend to go and get another bottle at 11 years old. And he didn't. This is my best friend, Zach, and we were neighbors. And he wouldn't go and do it. He's like, oh, no, I'm tired. I want to go home. And I didn't speak with him for like 3 weeks after that, my best friend who I was talking to every day. So right away, you can sort of see that I have an abnormal relationship with this substance we call alcohol. Fast forwarding a little bit, when I was in high school, I got my wisdom teeth pulled, was introduced to some narcotic medication the doctor gave me for that, and I really liked how the effect that produced, and so I lied to the doctor about the amount of pain I was having, and he gave me more pills, and this went on for like 6 weeks, which is, abnormal until my mom intervened and told the doctor that not to prescribe anymore. And this is at 14 and a half or something, And that day when my mom was intervening in the doctor's office, I felt this sinking feeling in my stomach. I was like, oh man, this is going to go away, and I don't want that. Shortly thereafter, unexpectedly, my older brother passed away of drugs and alcohol related death. Eric, he was getting into trouble and stuff, and living the life that we live when we're out there. And they found him in a hotel room down in Santa Barbara, California. And I remember the sheriff. We were living in Forestville at the time, and I remember the sheriff coming up the front stairs and knocking on the door. And I thought it was about me. I was like, oh shit, they caught me for something. But he talked to my dad, and my dad started weeping. And then he told me and my sister what had happened. And that was a very sad thing that happened. That was a very painful experience. And at 15 and a half years old, I didn't know how to process that. And I went into sort of this dark period. And I'd recently been introduced to, marijuana and drinking a little bit more frequently. And so I sought escape, with the medication that I had at hand. And I sort of shut myself off from the world. And internally, I made this decision that the world was out to get me. And I felt this deep separation from other people. And, I hadn't grown up with much religion in my life, but I saw other people who, were religious or would come to the door on Easter Sunday or come and knock in and try and spread their faith with others, and I ridiculed them. But really, I could have used some of that right then, So yeah, that was a tragic thing that happened, and I started consuming more. Fast forward a little bit, I went to this party, and I didn't feel, I wasn't unpopular, I wasn't popular in school. I was just sort of one of the average people, and someone handed me a beer, and I was like too shy to like talk to anybody really or hang out, and had a beer, and suddenly like I felt a lot better. And then they gave me another beer, and I was like, oh man, this is pretty good. Like, I could talk to people who I wouldn't normally talk with. Like, they were my best friend. Like, we'd known each other for years. And I felt a little bit taller. My acne fell right off my face. Like, I could talk to these girls. And I was like, holy tamale, this is awesome, And another beer, and then suddenly I don't have any problems. Then, my shoulders relax a little bit. I can take a deep breath. And, I later lost consciousness that evening and blacked out due to getting too drunk, and ended up peeing all over my friend's car, which was not something that I planned on doing when I started that evening. And I got, the next morning we got back into my friend's car to go to school, and I didn't believe. He's like, oh, you pissed all over my car. I was like, what are you talking about, man? Like, I would never do that. You know me, we're friends. And sure enough, when I got in that car, you could smell it, Now, like, I don't say that because it's a popular thing to say. I don't say that because I want to talk about, like, some of the disgusting things I've done, as an alcoholic. I say that because it's my honest truth, and because, like, there was this sense of shame that came over me the morning after when I got in that car, and I realized that I had done that even though I didn't want to do that. And that stuck with me for a minute, I couldn't shake it. And that kind of shame that came over me kept happening. It kept happening. So that was sort of adolescence, and a few years later, into high school. At this point, I had been, experimenting with all sorts of different colored pills and liquors and substances and whatnot. Sticking to our primary purpose, I'll just try and keep it to alcohol, but there was other stuff. I was fully addicted to this other stuff, and I was drinking every day, and couldn't keep up with classes, so I was like, well, it's too much work to go, so I'll just, BS the test, and, started getting arrested, wrecked a few cars, totaled this one car because I was driving, and I should have gotten a DUI, but I convinced the cop to take me to the hospital instead, and they gave me a CAT scan because I told them I hit my head, and if I didn't pass the DUI, it was because I hit my head when I crashed the car. And when I got there, I became combative with the orderlies or whatever, and they strapped me down in the bed and put me on like this 72-hour hold at the hospital, and I didn't like that. I told them what I thought of them, and they let me go a few days later, or X amount of time, I don't really know how much time lapsed, but when I was leaving the hospital, they gave me this discharge paperwork, like, this is what was wrong with you. And what it said at the top was altered state of consciousness. They couldn't figure it out. And I thought that was a victory, I just had like a 5150 or whatever it's called. And I thought that was a success because I didn't get a DUI. And the next day, or not even a day later, I was getting more liquor and getting liquored up again. I went driving around with my friends looking for where my car was. I just didn't stand it, And so I'll fast forward a little bit for the sake of time. I mean, you guys are probably starting to paint the picture a little bit. Just before I got sober, I was, I didn't have a place to live. I was living part of the time in this garden shed in the back of my mom's yard that she didn't know I was living back there. No electricity, no bathroom, no running water, no nothing. And I was drinking every day. I lost every job I had consecutively for like over a year and a half. Couldn't hold anything together. I was on unemployment or something, and my family didn't want to see me anymore, and I couldn't show up for them, and my mother's love was not enough to keep me sober. And what was more painful than all of these outside things and not being able to show up for my family or be able to say I was going to do something and do it was this cold wind that was blowing through the center of me. And I was not okay most of the day. Most of all the time I was not okay, perpetually not okay. And there was this racing thoughts and anxiety, and I was having all of these strange like health side effects, and one day I'd have diarrhea, the next day I'd be dry heaving, and my soul was dying. And there was a lot of times where I looked at this handful of pills and this bottle of booze, and I would be throwing up bile, and I knew that I needed to keep it down long enough for it to help me, so I wouldn't be sick anymore. And I didn't know if I could. And man, that's a lot of pills, that's a lot of booze. And I take it, and I try and hold it down. And this one particular time I'm thinking of, I was able to hold it down, and I got really close to death. I probably overdosed and back in that shed in my mom's backyard. And I was, tottering in and out of consciousness, and I said to myself, well, it wouldn't be too bad if I went. Like, at least I wouldn't have to wake up tomorrow. And that's where drugs and alcohol took me. And so shortly after that, I got into some legal trouble up in Sebastopol. I had this thing at a laundromat. I used my pocket knife to open the machine, and there was quarters in there, and I used the quarters to do my laundry for free. And that's a felony, actually. So don't do that. Word to the wise. And so I didn't remember a whole lot about it, but when the cops came to talk to me, they said the cameras remembered just fine. And so I got arrested on that one and went to jail, the NCDC or whatever, here in Sonoma County. And it wasn't the first time I'd been there, but the first time I got booked in all the way, And basically I detoxed and had a psychotic break in there because I was coming off of like 6 different substances, and I tried to escape, and they didn't like that. And they put me in solitary, and they call it ADSEG, and anytime I left my cell, I had to have 2 guards and shackles and chains. So I went to felony court in shackles and chains for this $19.25 in quarters, basically just doing laundry criminally. And the judge sits there and looks at me, and I was scared. I was terrified. I was scared out of my mind. And just before I went into that courtroom, I got on my knees, and I was praying to a God I didn't believe in. I said, please, honestly, help me. I will never drink. I will never use drugs ever again. I don't even want to do it. Please help me. Take this away. I'm done. Just make this court stuff go away. I don't want to go to jail for the rest of my life. Please help me. And I meant it. Had you give me a lie detector test, I would have shown I was telling the truth. And some miracles started happening. The criminal charges got reduced, and then this lawyer agreed to represent me for free, and then they got reduced to more, and I was able to go to rehab after getting honest in open court about my alcoholism. And that was where my road of recovery sort of began. I was able to go to CDRP, which is Kaiser. I was taking a bus from this garden shed in my mom's backyard. 4 or 5 buses each way while detoxing out to the city and back 6 days a week. And that was an awful experience. But somehow, some way, I guess I was a little bit willing. And it was super helpful to have these criminal charges like propelling me in the right direction. And, I'd said that prayer, but I never really thought about it again, for several years. There was a time after I got those released from jail that I did use like several times before I got into rehab. And I didn't understand why that was, because there's lots of times I told myself like, oh, I'm not going to use today. And then there I was like 8 o'clock in the evening, like I was all lit up on powdery substance A, B, or C, and like drinking. And I was like, oh man, this is just a bad test day. Like I'll try again tomorrow. Or I was like, oh, I just need to quit doing whiskey and like only drink organic wine. Or like, don't do so much of this powder, like do less of that in combination with this. I was trying to manage the situation, manage life through chemistry, and it was failing me every time. So went to rehab, and that started to save my life. I used in rehab, didn't tell anybody, didn't get caught somehow. That was an awfully painful experience. I suggest not doing that. I was able to, get honest with some of the friends that I still have that I went there with and tell them about it and sort of make amends through that, through the process of recovery that you guys taught me. And so basically, after rehab, they suggested I move into a sober living environment, an SLE, which was Marine Services for Men here in San Rafael. And I still live in San Rafael for some reason. But yeah, I lived there for 2 years and started working the steps with a sponsor, and things started getting different, I wouldn't say that they got really good right away, but they got a lot different. My sponsor pointed out to me like, hey, congratulations, you haven't been arrested in 6 months, good job. And I was like, well, I guess something's working in my life. Or like, hey, how are your hangovers going? I'm like, I don't have hangovers anymore. He's like, exactly. And I was like, okay, get this self-pity, this, feeling sorry for myself. Like, oh, I don't have a girlfriend. He's like, well, you have 6 months sober. Shut up. And now I guess that's what I needed, So, yeah, I started working through the steps, and I balked at them all, but I started to get a little bit of honesty, and thank goodness for Alcoholics Anonymous and you guys bearing your soul to me. I don't think I'd be alive today without AA. And so anyway, I was working the steps with the sponsor, and step 1, we talked about honesty, spiritual principle of honesty and being honest with myself. And he asked me, like, do you think that your life has become unmanageable? Like, are you powerless over alcohol? And I got the powerless over alcohol part, but I didn't think my life was unmanageable. And he said to me, well, let's look at it like this. If your life was a business and you are the general manager of Justin D. Limited Liability Corporation, how are you managing this business? Like, how many times have you gone to jail? How many times have you overdosed? How many times did you drink when you didn't want to drink? How many times did you ruin your family's birthday parties? How many times did you do weird sexual shit for drugs? How many times did this happen? How many times did that happen, right? And I had to admit it right there, started having a first step experience like, damn, okay, I guess the general manager of Justin D is trying to kill him. And so I need a new management, a new employer. And so, all right, like we got through step 1, and I had this, realization to my innermost that, shit, I think I do have this thing. And I started hearing some people's shares at meetings, and I started relating, like, oh man, like you told my story, like, have you been reading my journal? Like, you thought like I thought, you did what I did, like, how is this possible? How could these people have my thoughts? And they said that you said that this 12 steps worked for you. I was like, maybe it could work for me. I don't know. I didn't really think it could for a long time, but I just did a little bit anyway. And things started getting a little bit better. In step 2, he said, it's an opportunity for you to use the tools of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, until I did step 1, I couldn't get to step 2. And in step 2, that suddenly, like, there's sponsorship available. There's reading spiritual books. There's studying the big book. There's working the steps. There's prayer. There's meditation. There's going to meetings. There's fellowship. There's working with others. all of these free tools are at my disposal, and spiritual tools are at my disposal that were not there until I could admit to my innermost self I was alcoholic. And he said, that's step 2, use the tools. And I became a little bit more willing and opened my mind a little bit. I don't know how that happened. Maybe it's probably the grace of God. And step 3, he said, it's just a commitment to finish the rest of the steps. Are you willing to finish the rest of the steps? And I said, yes. He said, great. Faith and action meet here, and we're going to start writing. So I did some inventory, and I balked at that. And 5 months later, I had this 16 pages or something of, my poor me and my life story and what everybody did to me. And I got to have a new outlook on what had happened and working with God and the sponsor in step 5. And step 5 took about 3 months. But, I guess that was what was called for. I got to see my part in things. I got to see, when I was running from those helicopters over in Sebastopol, all night long, and then they kick my ass. They're not assholes because they kick my ass. I'm an asshole because I ran from the cops and broke the law. And that was a mind blow to me. I'd never conceptualized that before. And other stuff oh man, you mean I set trains of circumstances in motion that I started the train moving? What? And I got an opportunity to see through his eyes and through the Spirit a new way of seeing. You guys gave me eyes to see. And after the 5th step, I thought it was going to be the skies would part and I'd see the eye of God and I'd feel the light, and that just wasn't my experience. My spiritual experience has been sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, of the educational variety, as it says in the second appendix. And in step 6, we just went through and wrote down the common themes of, and how self-reliance failed me. We looked at the sexual inventory and dishonesty, and became willing to turn that over to something that wasn't me, And it was doing some prayer and some meditation, and before I was doing prayer and meditation, I'd have this big old cup of coffee, I put a pound of grounds in it, and I'd chug this thing, and then I'd go out and, I'm meditating, and and I did this for over a year, right? Over a year. And then finally one day it dawned on me maybe I shouldn't do that, And things started changing, and the anxiety went away, and I hadn't thought about drinking or using in a while, and suddenly when things came up, I called my sponsor, which is totally revolutionary for a hopeless drunk alcoholic like myself, And you guys taught me this stuff. So, and in 7, became willing to turn it over, and then he said every day going forward, you're going to say the 7-step prayer and become willing to give your from the bottom of your feet all the way to the top on your hair, everything that you are, over to this concept of a higher power. And I said, okay. And that's been working well. And then in 8, pulled amends and started making those, and that solidified my 9th step. And it really showed me the experience of step 3, this trust and reliance on a power that's greater than myself. Really, it really became the proof in the pudding, there'd be these people oh man, it's been, taking up my thought life for years, 10, 15 years, I pulled a knife on this guy when I was drunk one time over this girl, and I felt so bad about it, and I didn't want to do that, it wasn't my plan. When I was getting ready, I put on a suit to go to this grungy bar, and I had a knife with me, and there was this girl, I was trying to be with her biblically, and it just didn't work out, and then I called the cops on him. I tried to say he had the knife, and anyway, so I got an opportunity to make amends to this, right? It'd been really rubbing on my conscience for years and years and years and years, and I couldn't see the guy on Facebook or nothing, and so I reached out to him spontaneously. He's oh man, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have this much, I think I had 2 years clean and sober at the time, and I'm trying to live on a spiritual basis, and if I don't do this step, I might drink again. Is there anything I can do to make this right? What I did, how I hurt you was unacceptable, and I'm willing to go to any length. And he's I didn't even remember about that, man. And here it has been in the forefront of my mind for 11 years, my alcoholic thinking. Maybe you guys can relate. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm probably been talking for a while, but yep. So yeah, just and making amends to my mom, having an adult. Well, somewhat adult a relationship with her and the family. It's funny, I got sober and suddenly there wasn't this, my brother died, right? So they were all worried I was going to die. And I have not yet died. What a miracle, right? Like, what an opportunity. To live another day on God's green earth. Suck air, as another alcoholic says to me every day in his gratitude list. I get to wake up and suck air, and that's a privilege. Get a second chance at a first-rate life. And so just in closing, like, man, things are good today. I sort of balked on step 10 for a while. I didn't understand the everyday and the written part. I thought it was like going over and self-flatulating or being in self-pity about the bad things I'd done. And finally, with working with a couple sponsors, working through the steps again and again, some things came to light. I got a little bit more willingness, and I saw the relief that was just always available. At any moment in time, I can pick up a pen and pad. I can call another alcoholic. I can use the tools at our disposal anytime. And as our book says, God either is or isn't. What is your choice to be? So on some days, like, I become agnostic, like I totally forget about, I forget that I'm an alcoholic, and I think I have to manage situations, and the terror can come up, and my internal condition becomes like really intense, and inevitably it always winds me back on my knees at this place where I meditate every day in my living room or in the bathroom at work even, like, God, please help me. Like, all right, I see it. I've been managing again. Please forgive me. Like, what do you want me to do? And written inventory, and then Levin, I've been meditating for a while, so life changes, right? Like, just because I'm sober, it doesn't mean there isn't any adversity anymore. I still have, like, my boss is on my 10th step, like, at least twice a week. My girlfriend will make it on there at least once a week, like, oh, she didn't recognize me for everything I did for her, or on Friday, my boss was like, made a condescending comment to me, and it triggered me, and I was like, oh, this effing a-hole and this and that, and I deserve respect, and, having a conversation in my head when the guy's right over there, but I paused. You guys taught me that. Pause when agitated out for. Ask for the right thought or action. Who do I ask? A power greater than myself, because I don't have sufficient power. Insufficient power. So what I need is that power. And when I use the tools, things seem to go pretty good. And regardless of how I think I'm doing or what I think I'm doing the next indicated right thing that you guys, I run by a lot of alcoholics, like, oh, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, I'm planning on doing this. What do you think? That seems to keep me in between these lines and my seat assignment, in between these guardrails. And then step 12, I should really stop talking, actually. And shortly, step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, I would say I've had like several spiritual experiences. Some of them have been like this magnificent thing. Like, I was laying in bed one time and something happened, and it got really light in the room, and I felt the nearness of my Creator, and all of this emotions poured into me, and suddenly I could see, like, my whole life, like, from other people's point of views and how I'd harmed them, and I felt their emotions of what was going down. This went on for like 6 hours in the middle of the night one time, and that was a spiritual experience. I've heard like the voice of this booming voice, like, in my head. I was like, there's nobody else in the room. I've been on a spiritual mountaintop, and then I've been back in hell. Selfishness and self-centeredness to the core, and working with others has been so helpful. It keeps me centered, every time. I'm working with 2 guys in the 5th step right now, and it's just beyond comprehension, what our the first line in chapter 7, working with others, like, nothing works like working with others, simply put. And that's been my experience. You guys helped me grow, If I didn't have sponsors to take me through the steps, then, like, I could have never done this, And it's not like you charge a monthly fee, It's so freely given, And they stay sober as a byproduct. And now I have the opportunity to carry this message, not my message, the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have an opportunity to learn about it, and to increase my conscious contact with God and to carry this message in the process. And something happens, right? Like, I don't think about drinking or using, somehow, like, working spiritual principles, and then, like, you just don't think about drinking or using. Like, it's not like I'm, like, trying to manage, I gotta stay away from the bar today. Like, no, like, live this spiritual life, and then something happens to me. I can't explain what it is, but I would call it a spiritual experience. So it's an honor to be here and to be able to show up and be asked. If I didn't say anything that, spoke to any of you, like, hit another meeting, I'm just one person. I don't represent Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just a drunk trying to make it today. So thank you for letting me share.
You got a topic?
Topic, yeah. I like honesty. Yeah. Where do you need to be honest with yourself today? Or whatever you need to talk about.
All right, floor is open for discussion. The topic is honesty.
My name is Jim.
Tom.
I was coming here for a while and I really looked at it. I'm up. I used to leave there at 7:30.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more videos, especially if you're interested in cooking. Cheers.